Follow Matt on Twitter and Instagram at Matt Schneidman, or use the talk and text line at 1-414-799-1973.
If I'm in this crummy situation, let's make content out of it.
The Matt Schneidman Show is presented by Potawatomi Sportsbook, a new era in sports betting.
Never go corporate, always go local.
Now with Doug Russell.
Doug, that's why you need to focus and you do everything that we say.
Here's Matt Schneidman on the game.
I think me and Matt have a much better feel for each other.
Matt Schneidman Show, Tuesday, September 3rd, the eve of all of our flights to Brazil. I don't want to take too much time, Doug, yapping, because we have a nice start to the show tonight as part of the Matt LaFleur podcast, which will appear on this show and elsewhere throughout this season. Once a month, I'll be sitting down with the Packers head coach. I sat down with him for 25 minutes on Friday, so there might be one or two things that are outdated, but
I don't think so.
Yeah, the kicker stuff, since he's already talked about that, and
I suppose
the captain stuff, because he said they're not doing season-long captains today in his press conference. But in the future, we will record and then publish it day of. But without further ado, I don't have to do anything for the first 25 minutes of the show. There will be a break at the halftime point of this interview. But my 25-minute sit-down with Packers head coach Matt LaFleur. Hope you enjoy. All right, episode 1 of the Matt LaFleur podcast with me, the Athletics' Matt Schneidman. We're here at Lambeau Field with the 6th-year Packers head coach. He's getting old, folks. I don't have a question to start, but we're starting with what I call the vomit scale. I want you to rate these things on a scale of 1 to 10 for how much they make you vomit. My all-time favorite press conference moment from my 6 years here, and I can joke about this because I've joked about it with him. After you guys lost to the Colts in 2020, Mark Daniels asked, "How can you live with MVS?" And your face after he asked that was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. 1 to 10, that question.
I'm trying to.
It was the game where MVS.
I know. I remember it. Yeah, we lost in overtime.
Well, because he fumbled, but he also had the big catch at the end of regulation to send it into overtime.
I'd say that's pretty low.
Okay.
I'd say that's pretty low, but that was more the fact that we lost the game makes me want to vomit. But the question, like that's neutral 5.
Okay. How about when a phone goes off in a presser or someone arrives late?
That's probably more like 8 or 9-ish right there.
For real.
For real. Like that bothers me. Like, how do you not turn your phone off? In a press conference.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
I mean, so just take note of that.
When people say, we'll see what Matt LaFleur's true offense looks like with Jordan Love at quarterback.
That's more funny to me. So it doesn't bother me. It's kind of, it makes me laugh. I'd put that like a 2.
I think the statute of limitations about taking this seriously has expired. He should have gone for it on 4th and 8 from the 8.
No, that's a 0.
Okay.
I can't let that, because, and I don't even know why I try to explain myself, but I really feel like that was the aggressive play. Instead of playing for the tie, we were really playing for the win by kicking the field goal there and then getting the ball back. But whatever, people are going to perceive it however they want.
And of course, the original source of the quote, when people ask you about what do you think if you have a wide receiver 1? Is that number 10? Is that the basis for it?
No, I just, I think it was just probably getting that question so many times or hearing about it like so many days in a row that just, sometimes it's all about the moment, right? You keep hearing something that you don't necessarily care about. And in the moment, it's a 10, but in all actuality, it's probably like a 3.
Okay, now for the real questions. Obviously, everyone cares about your $220 million quarterback, but
man, that's a lot of money.
How did you, and this is going to sound like a simple question, but I want to dive into a little bit. How did you arrive at the decision to hire the Boston College head coach as your defensive coordinator?
Oh, man. I thought we were going to go a different direction right there. I would say this. He was a guy that I tried to talk to years ago. And it didn't work out. And he's a guy that I've always respected in this business. Having he having worked with people that I obviously respect, with Kyle Shanahan, with my brother, with Robert Saleh, I just know how many people he knows football. I think he's got great relationships, not only with the players, but with other staff members. I love how he carries himself. And quite honestly, going into the hiring process, we do, ironically enough, have the same agent. And Trace Armstrong told me, he's like, it's probably a long shot. And for us to be able to get it done was a miracle in itself. To be
Really? So when that name first comes on your radar, does Trace reach out to you and say, hey, I know you're looking for a DC. Here's a guy who you might want to look out to. Then do you call Robert? Do you call other people? How does the process work?
Yeah, I would say it was just the opposite.
Okay.
I called Trace and told him, hey, what do you think of Halfley, before we got going with, all the interviews. And that's when I was told probably not. And so then you reach out to Jeff Halfley, and I could tell there was some interest there, but there were some obstacles as well. I mean, you're talking the guy that's under contract. The timing of it isn't always great. He's got a lot of people that he's trying to think about and do right by. And you're at Boston College. Obviously, it's after the college hiring cycle for the most part. So I know it weighed on him heavily to even consider it. And then just the financial implications as well. But I could tell that there was enough interest to kind of push it forward. And, throughout the hiring process, he met with myself, and I had a hiring committee, if you will,
Yeah.
that consisted of a couple of our assistant coaches. I had Goody. I wanted him to be a part of it, because that's a big change when you go from a 3-down to a 4-down, and just making sure that he was comfortable with whoever we were going to bring in. So he was a part of it, and just through it all, like he did the best, and we're really excited to have him.
What stood out through that interview process? Because all we've heard from the players is how great he is. What stands out to you during that process about him?
I think everything stood out, to be honest with you, just in terms of how he carries himself, how he's able to articulate a vision, what he's all about, the things he looks for in players and coaches, how he communicates. Obviously, I think him being a head coach, I mean, there's a lot of characteristics that translate to coming to this level, and he's coached at this level. So there's a familiarity with just, what you can get done at this level. And I think, he just checked all the boxes, is the best way I can put it.
So I'm assuming you don't go into the process saying, I want a schematic change. Let's look for a DC who runs this. It's more so he had to sell you on changing the scheme.
Yeah, somewhat. I think, being my background, being an offensive guy, I think that I always talk about you can poke holes through whatever defense you're going against. There's going to be strengths and weaknesses to every system, both offensively or defensively. And for me, it's more of what is our play style going to look like? What are we going to be emphasizing on a daily basis? And that's what really intrigued me, because it's when you look at just historically the best defenses, obviously you better have some damn good players. But there's a style to how they just do all the little things that are within your control, how they communicate, how they run to the football, how they attack the football and try to force those takeaways. So I think it's more of a mentality and a style of play.
One of the quotes that stuck with me from this preseason was Jair, and he's pretty honest with us, and he made it clear when he wasn't pleased with the prior regime in so many words. And about Jeff, he said he went into his office on the first day, and he said he listens to players, he takes our suggestions, which isn't always the case with other guys. How have you seen him work on a day-to-day basis now that you got him in the door? And is it everything you think you were sold on in that process?
Yeah, well, he loves the game of football. He loves, again, working with people, coaches, and players. And he's a junkie. He's one of the first guys in, one of the last guys to leave. And it's not just guarding his desk doing fake work. It's watching tape every time I walk into his office, or he's the film is on and he's watching ball. And so, I think there's just growing up in this league in particular, that's how we were kind of trained to go about, doing your business on a daily basis, is just watch ball, watch the tape, watch other teams. And that is consistent with Hafley's actions.
So obviously you're an offensive guy, but as the head coach, your job is to find the best defensive coordinator. I know you didn't hire Mike Pettin, but you're on your third one. Do you feel any pressure yourself to get this one right? And, it obviously you've had a couple special teams coordinators. This is your third DC. Do you put any added pressure on yourself for this to work out? Because, you obviously moved on from Pettin and then you let go Joe last offseason.
Yeah, you always put pressure on yourself and trying to provide and get the best people for the situation. And so, yeah, I feel an immense amount of pressure in terms of that's my job as the head coach, is to make sure we get it right in every aspect. And there's nothing worse than having to replace people. So you take that really personal. I think anytime that you make credit, I think he's come in with a great mindset. I loved how he attacked the offseason. He was here the majority of the offseason, how he competes on a daily basis. So I'm really excited. Obviously, the relationship that he has with that side of the ball, with his coaches, I think is very important. With his teammates is very important. I mean, he's a guy that has an infectious energy, and I tell him all the time that's a blessing and a curse because you can affect it either way. But I'm super excited about the year that I think he's poised to have.
This is a serious question. Are you going back to season-long captains so people just don't randomly go out to be the captain?
That's TBD.
Okay.
That's TBD. And I think that's, that's always a tricky one. I've thought at length about it. I've talked to other guys about it, how you decide on that whole process. I don't think there's a right answer for it. I think every team's a little bit different. I think ultimately your true leaders emerge throughout the course of the season. I think it's easy right now. I mean, every team in the league is 0-0. You haven't lost any games. I think you find out a lot about your team, about the real leaders, when adversity strikes. And the majority of the teams in this league will go through some form of adversity throughout. You just don't know when it's coming. It's just, but again, it all goes back to the response. How do you respond in those situations? So as far as the captains are concerned, we're just we'll take it and try to make the best decision possible. And but as far as right now, I don't have an answer for you, Matt.
Coming up next.
It's actually very cringeworthy when I go back and I see anything of myself. I'm like, man.
That's next on the Matt LaFleur podcast. Welcome back to the Matt LaFleur podcast. Matt, I want to ask you about maybe an unheralded guy or two on the defensive side of the ball. We know who your cornerstones are, the Rashawn Garys, the Jair Alexanders. Who's maybe a guy or a couple guys that have exceeded your expectations? And this isn't to trash any guy who isn't your answer, but who are maybe some guys or a guy that have caught you by surprise with the level of camp that they've had?
Oh, that's a good question. I think anytime that you acquire new players, you're not really sure until you start working with them, especially rookies, because you study them, but until you start to work with people on a daily basis and see what they're about and watch them grow. But I'm really excited about just our whole safety room, everybody included in that room. I mean, X bringing him in here, always respected him from afar in regards to when we played him last year in New York or the previous 2 seasons in New York, and the playmaking ability that he has, the communicator that he is, the type of leader that I always had heard about. And then you see him, how he handles his business on a daily basis. I wouldn't say it was a surprise to me, but it was good to see the actions match everything, the perception. Yeah.
The $16 million a year.
that too. But I think some of our young safeties as well, when you like Javon Bullard and Evan Williams and KT Oladapo, I think all 3 of those guys have the ability to take what they're learning in the classroom and then go apply it to the field. And that's, like, again, until you start working with them, you're not quite sure how that's going to play out. And they're all very instinctive guys, and they've all made plays throughout the course of training camp. So it's going to be exciting to see their growth once they get playing time in the regular season.
I've learned to be careful reading into how you answer questions at the podium as it pertains to,
you think I'm full of crap?
No. What I'm saying is, people have said to me, when you said that's a question for Rich Bisaccia, they're like, oh, he's not confident in the kicker situation at all. I'm like, maybe he just didn't want to answer the question, or I had a bad day. So my question is, I'm assuming you've met your new kicker as we record this on, Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I met him yesterday.
How much of a concern is that position going into the season, just with the uncertainty that there is there?
Well, you said it. You just don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so first exposure was yesterday. And it was a good first exposure, but that's only one time. And we always talk about consistency being the truest measurement of performance. He's got to consistently do it. But the situation we put him in to see his first kick, it was a 56-yarder into the wind, and he nailed it. And Jair actually, after a couple of his kicks, came up to me. He's like, man, I love this guy. And so their early returns are very favorable for him up to this point.
Going back to that safety room, obviously your top 3 from last year, Rudy, J.O., and Savage. Yeah. That's a lot of turnover there, especially to give a new defensive coordinator, new guys who don't know, like, their teammates as much. We know what X brings, but what in particular about Evan and Javon have made you confident then, okay, these are guys I can throw out there in week 1 and they can handle their own?
Yeah, they played at a high level, and they made plays, and they've made plays throughout the course of not only their college career, but throughout the course of training camp, both in the practices and in some of the preseason games. I just think they're both really instinctive players. I don't think you have to overcoach them. You give them their rules. They're able to, like I talked about earlier, they're able to take what they learn in the classroom and apply it to the field. I think they love the game of football, but they're just, I can't tell you how, they're just very, very intelligent football players. And I know there's still going to be a learning curve for them. It's not like they're not going to make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes. There's no doubt about it. Everybody makes mistakes, but I do think they're 2 guys that are going to learn from those, both their successes and their failures, and be able to become better and better and better the more reps they get.
You've been a big proponent over the last couple of years of, we need 2 really good running backs, and you've referred to Aaron and AJ as 1A, 1B, 1A, 1A even. with the state of your running back room right now, do you need Josh Jacobs to be the workhorse that he's been? And I think he ranks second in rushing yards and carries behind Derrick Henry since he entered the league. Is it going to be that same shared backfield entering the season, given, the injury status of some of those guys?
Yeah, I think that's to be determined as well. I think, the reason you like to have multiple backs is because those guys take a pounding, and it's probably one of the toughest positions to play. There's a, I don't want to say it, but there is a high rate of injury for that position, just because I like it to getting into a car crash with every time they touch the football. So, but he has shown the durability that it takes to be a lead back. So I'm super excited about that. We've had discussions about it because I want to say that we've never given our number one running back more than 50% of the
He did air quotes there behind number one running back.
Yeah, number one running back, number one receiver. But I don't think we've ever given a guy over 50% of the carries. So that is going to be a little bit new to us and how we play and how we rotate those guys. But I think if there's anybody that's capable of doing it, it's Josh Jacobs. And I'm excited for him because he's been able to do it in both the run game and in the pass game, which he's a 3-down back. He's a great pass protector, but I think we'll be able to unlock some things with him out of the backfield as well.
I asked this question because I think Andy Reid was on Chris Long's podcast a couple of years ago and said he was asked about the strangest inspiration for a play call he's ever had. And he said when he was here in Green Bay, a janitor who cleaned the facility wanted to draw up a play. He drew it up on a napkin. They ran it in a game and it was a touchdown. What is the strangest inspiration for a play call that you've ever had?
That's a great question. I get these fan mail with these crazy ideas all the time, but I can't say up to this point
that you've used
that
any?
we've ever used any. I don't think we have any crazy inspiration for play ideas. You certainly use other people's film, and we watch a lot of tape of other teams across the league. Each and every week, you're always looking at the explosive reel, how teams are generating explosives, because explosives lead to points typically. So I can't think of anything crazy. Hopefully something will happen, this year where somebody sends me some really good stuff. And,
but you're not closed-minded to use a fan's fan mail for a play if it's good enough.
It better be good. It usually is best if you can send me something with a video clip attached to it.
Okay. I'll let that was a bad decision you just made there because you're about to get a lot in your mail with video
That's all right.
clips.
I have I don't care where the idea comes from. It's just whether it's good or not.
All right. 2 more. We obviously haven't seen 11 on 11 since training camp. Where does the right guard position stand? That seemed like the one spot that was maybe up in the air during camp. Steno spoke very highly of Sean Ryan filling in after Jordan Morgan went down. How have you seen Jordan handle playing a different position after he said he wanted to be a left tackle in the league? Where does that whole thing stand?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think there's anything that says that he can't be a left tackle in this league. It's just kind of on a need basis right now, going into the season. And I think Sean's taken advantage of the opportunity, I would say, kind of where Jordan was getting better and showing a lot of progress. And then he gets injured and misses out on a ton of valuable reps. And Sean, to his credit, took advantage of those reps. And so, but like I've said many times in my press conferences, and I'm being honest when I say this,
it's all about the best 5 out there.
No, I wasn't going to go there.
Okay,
I know you guys love that line so much.
It's not making fun of it. I get it,
but it is true. So I don't really care if you're making fun of it.
No, I'm not.
But I would say that it's going to be a competitive situation, and we will, I have no problem rotating those guys. We did it a year ago. It benefited us. I think it helped develop Sean Ryan, quite frankly, getting those reps, and when Runyon was kind of banged up, and it helped take a little bit of a load off Runyon in that situation. So we could do the same thing this year. It just, I think it's going to be a very fluid situation throughout the course of the season.
Just lastly, Aside from the travel distance from your first game as Packers head coach to entering your 6th season, I can't believe it's been 6 years already.
We're getting old, man.
Because I think
Fast.
I'm 29 years old. I'm not old yet.
You look a lot older than that.
Yeah. Besides the travel distance from Green Bay to Chicago for that game in 2019, and I think this travel distance is just a little bit longer. How has Matt LaFleur, the head coach, changed in the last 5 years?
Oh man, I just think I'm a lot more comfortable in certain situations. Obviously, I saw something the other day that showed like my first press conference to the start of this year, and it's night and day. It's actually very cringeworthy when I go back and I see anything of myself. I'm like, man, I just think, but I think that's life, right? Is you go through situations, you got to get uncomfortable to really maximize your growth. And I would say that I've been through a lot of situations, both good and bad in my time here. And I also have a lot of confidence in the people around me, just knowing that as the head coach, there's obviously responsibility, kind of set the vision for everybody, but it's up to people whether or not they want to follow and choose to follow that vision. And I just have a lot of confidence, not only in our players, but our coaches and support staff that everybody's moving in the same direction. And that gives me a lot of peace and calm to be able to think clearly and just try to be yourself.
It's off to Brazil. Let's go.
Can't wait. Appreciate it, man.
Do you think fans are actually going to send in video clips of plays that he hopes or that they hope he'll run in games?
Gosh, I hope so. I mean, the invitation is now out there. When he said that, I was like,
that's why I
"Ooh."
said he messed up, because he might get an inundation of clips.
I know, but you couldn't see it. But, there were 4 of us in the room, and he kind of said it with a little glint in his eye when he said it. So,
yeah, I don't know if he was being entirely serious. I don't know if he'd go through all of them, but nothing groundbreaking per se, but I think there was some good stuff in there. The Jeff Hafley stuff, how he was told he wouldn't get him at first from his agent, who's also LaFleur's agent. I think the part about Josh Jacobs getting more than 50% of the carries, I don't know if that stat is accurate, but I think his point was it's not going to be like a split backfield that we call 1A and 1B anymore. Josh Jacobs is going to get a yeoman's share of the workload.
I think we knew that. We had a pretty good idea.
I think we knew that, but it's another thing to hear the head coach say it.
Sure. And the play caller.
Of course. The guy who's responsible for giving Josh Jacobs the ball.
Correct.
The cringing back at his old press conferences. I wasn't here for his first press conference.
It wasn't great.
Yeah, I got hired a couple months later.
Here's a little insight to that. Just there were a lot of us who, when he was hired and we saw that news conference. Now, listen, you want the results to happen on the field. You don't necessarily have to win the press conference, but winning the press conference is nice. He did not win that press conference.
No, neither did Nick Sirianni, but
sure. Yeah, excellent point. And they wound up going to a Super Bowl. But there were a lot of us who were wondering, boy, was this a mistake? Is this guy ready for prime time? That was something that wasn't just said off the air, too. It was said on the air by a lot of people.
No, I'm sure it was.
And, it just goes to show you can't always, first impressions are great, but that's not the only impression that someone can give. And the results on the field have been pretty damn good.
What was your biggest takeaway from that sit down because you were obviously in the room? Doug was fantastic, making it all sound good. And that audio sounded great. So God bless Doug Russell. What was your biggest takeaway from that 25 minutes with the head coach?
He was just relaxed. And I know that, when he was talking about the first press conference, it did kind of remind me that, he has really come a long way just in being more comfortable in his own skin. I think that, as he enters year number 6 as the Packers head coach, he has a good idea of, who he can count on. He has surrounded himself with good people. I thought your question about, is there any added pressure, considering that this is his 3rd defensive coordinator, he's had a couple of
immense pressure.
Yeah. And, he's traded out a lot of assistant coaches and special teams coordinators have been flipped out a couple of times as well during his tenure. He knows that he's got good players and they've come close, but that's not good enough. And that's just kind of one of the things that struck me about, that last answer. It's like, yeah, he's comfortable in his own skin. He's surrounded himself with good people. You look at how much more aggressive the defense appeared. Now, granted, it was 3 preseason games in a training camp that we've seen Jeff Hafley and his guys kind of show what they can show. But when you talk to the guys in the locker room after practice or after the preseason games, they just feel like they're more energized on defense. Jair Alexander's a prime example of that. Lucas Van Ness is another prime example of that. Rashawn Gary putting his hand in the dirt, getting that extra leverage to try to get home, to try to get to the quarterback. Those are some of the things that stand out to me. And when you hear the head coach kind of, talk about how, even the question about Rich Bisaccia, that's, you have to ask Rich Bisaccia. One of the things that I think some head coaches in all sports do poorly is delegate. And I think that Matt LaFleur, after a couple of years, learned maybe how to better delegate and to trust different people around him at different times. And I think that he's delegated, the defense really, truly to a guy who he really trusts in Jeff Hafley. Those were my takeaways. Obviously, we're not going to see any of the results until, they play the 17 games starting on Friday night.
Right.
But that was my biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah, I think what I enjoy about those settings, and that's the first time I've ever interviewed Matt LaFleur one-on-one on the record. We've had various conversations off the record over the years. I've been covering him his entire tenure here, aside from the first 3 months on the job. And having him sit down in a very comfortable, maybe the comfort of that couch that he was sitting in helps, but
like
a one-on-one setting.
Chair.
Yeah, a one-on-one setting like that, like you said, a relaxed setting. He's completely different than he is at the podium. When he's at the podium and he talks to us before practice, I get there's a sense of, I want to get out to practice. I got to finish, the game plan for the day or the practice script. It's already finished, but my point is he has stuff to do, and it's the daily questions, which we have to ask about the injuries and stuff like that. And like I said, there's going to be different stuff to talk about as we do this throughout the season once a month for about 25 minutes each time. Making the questions for this and the topics that I wanted to discuss, it was tough because we talked to him every single day for the last month, and there have been no games and nothing really new has happened.
Right.
It's just watching almost the same stuff every single day. So I hope there was a little bit fresh there for everybody, but I think having games and having different storylines develop themselves throughout the season will help.
And one of the things, here's a little peek behind the curtain for everyone listening that, weren't one of the 4 people that were in the room when it took place, because I edited it out. You did kind of a time check halfway through. It's like, how are we doing on time? And his response to it, again, edited out because it didn't really belong in the podcast, was, "No, I'm good. We're good. Just keep firing away. Let's go."
Yeah.
And he was having a good time with it, which I think came out in the interview as well.
I do too. He said I look older than 29.
You do.
He likes busting balls a little bit with me, which I appreciate it. Like, bringing out the human side in someone is something I would like to try and do here, because we see obviously the very regimented answers at the podium sometimes. And especially we get the other side of his human side when the phones go off. He does not like that.
No, he was very clear about that.
I didn't know if he was being serious when he said an 8. I think he said an 8 in the interview, and he was like, "No, I'm dead serious. I hate that."
Yeah. Well, and you didn't know because you weren't here for when Mike Sherman just ended his press conference when somebody's phone went off. He just was like, "You guys have no respect," and just stormed out. So coaches hate that.
Hate it.
There's this big, by the way, here's another peek behind the curtain. There's a big sign when you walk into the media auditorium: silence your phones. You cannot miss it. It smacks you in the face. And that was a direct result of the Mike Sherman incident of 2005, 2004, 2005. It was near the end. You could tell it was getting near the end. So when the phone goes off in the press conference, I guess there's really no excuse for it, right?
No excuse. And I think I've done it once before too, but at the end of the day, it's like, it's a professional setting. We're not his players. We don't have to call him coach.
Right.
He doesn't own us, boss us around, but it's just like a common courtesy thing in a professional setting. And also, if a phone goes off and he gets pissed, it could derail the rest of the press conference for everyone else. Like, it could sour his mood. And if my phone goes off and puts him in a sour mood and affects the answers to other people's questions, answers of which they need for a story, then that's on me.
Or he could storm out like Mike Sherman did, because he did not come back.
He did not.
He did not.
I was not there for that. I actually was not in the press conference when Steve's phone went off. I was in the side room sitting down with Brian Gutekunst for a story that's coming out tomorrow morning. And I did not realize that Matt LaFleur, when Pete Doherty suggested make Steve McGargy from the AP do push-ups, Matt LaFleur said, can he even do 20 push-ups?
How many people do you think of the press corps can?
I can.
I know you can. Domofsky probably can.
I don't know.
He's in pretty good shape.
I'm not going to take shots at anyone's physical fitness, even though
I'm
much could right
I'm
now.
not saying I could. Listen.
You can do 20 push-ups.
I'll point thumbs before fingers.
20 push-ups?
How much time do I have? I have to do them in a row?
No, in a row.
I don't know. I haven't done them in a while. That's a good question.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of push-ups. I, go to the gym now 5-6 days a week, and I don't do push-ups. I use the machines there, but I could probably crank out 40, 45 with maybe a pause or two in there. A short pause, not a long one.
I have less to push up than I used to, so I'm happy about that.
Yes, you do. I have about 170 pounds to push up, so it's not as much work.
Right.
They call it the brick and the stick for a reason now.
Right.
Which, by the way, we're on Apple Podcasts for the first time in our existence.
Nice.
John and I recorded earlier this afternoon. Hunter Baumgart, yeoman's work.
He is killing it around
already.
here.
Hunter's the best.
He's the absolute best.
People of this show, they've seen Hunter on here sporadically when Doug is not available. Hunter is the main producer for Drew and KB, the 3-hour show that precedes this one. If Hunter wasn't here, with all due respect to everybody else, I think the station would just collapse.
It probably would, because I like taking peeks behind the curtain, because if you're watching on the stream right now, Hunter on a dime made this. And thank goodness he did, because otherwise, again, if you're watching on the stream, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not, if you're watching on the stream, there's cameras on Matt and me. And when the podcast was going on, it was just a very awkward, staid, picture of Matt and I just not talking. So I went back into the locker room where Hunter's desk is and said, hey, can you make something real quick? And he came up with that. So we're very happy about that. Thank you, Hunter.
When it first started, I was like, oh, I'm just going to be on camera for 25 minutes doing nothing.
I know. I walked out of frame.
I was like, that's awkward.
Yeah, really awkward. So, yeah, we couldn't do this without Hunter. So thanks,
Hunter's
Hunter.
the best. On the other side of this break, we are going to preview the game, give you the latest on the injury report. I'm not going to be on the show again till
Monday.
Maybe Monday. I mean, I could probably call in maybe from O'Hare Airport tomorrow.
Okay.
On my layover. I'll be on the football feast on Thursday. But as far as Doug, Russell, and I, we might have to make some game predictions right now for Friday's game. The Packers fly to Brazil tomorrow morning, 7:20 a.m. takeoff time from Austin Straubel. I'll be live on TV then on NBC 26 and TMJ, I believe. So I got to wake up early tomorrow.
Okay.
But I'm getting paid for it, so it's worth it.
It's always the motivator, isn't it?
The Brazil trip. What am I going to do on the flight? And nobody cares, but guess what? I'm going to talk about it. What should I do? I'll take suggestions. 414-799-1973, the Nicolay Law talking text line. We'll be right back here on the Match Schneidman Show on the Game.
Don't mind what happens now and then, as long as you'll be
back to the Matt Schneidman Show, brought to you by the Potawatomi Sportsbook, a new era in sports betting, and of course, as always, Iron Jock. Iron Jock's t-shirts, the best t-shirt on the planet, no body odor smell ever. And now through September 15th, when you buy 2 small logoed short sleeve t-shirts, you'll get a third for free. That's a $39.99 item free when you buy 2. Just enter the promo code T-shirt BOGO. That's T-shirt, no hyphen, just TSHIRT BOGO at checkout. Go to ironjock.com for details. That's ironjoc.com. I will be departing for Brazil at, I don't want to, well, nobody cares about me, 5:25 p.m. tomorrow. Nobody's going to come and stalk me on the flight. I'm not important enough. 5:25 tomorrow.
Okay.
Layover in Chicago. About 10 hours, maybe a little less, actually, to Sao Paulo from Chicago.
I didn't realize that Sao Paulo was the 4th largest city in the world.
I did not know that either until you just said it. I am someone, I have OCD, the ass.
Okay.
And I need to have my phone on me at all times. I find myself opening and closing apps when I don't even have notifications. It's just the nature of what I do is to always be on the lookout for news or texts or updates. So I always have to have my phone near me. My closest friends will tell you I start spazzing out when I go an extended period of time without service. I was at a good friend's wedding in Colorado a couple weeks ago, and we were up high in the Rocky Mountains, and there was no service whatsoever at a wedding, so I just didn't have a phone for 4 hours. And the first bit, I was freaking out. Not freaking out, actually, but I was like, God, I need Wi-Fi. I was going around the cocktail hour asking the hostesses what the Wi-Fi password was.
Oh, boy.
So I will have service, obviously, in Brazil, but Twitter is my most used app. I'll just scroll Twitter all day, and I won't be able to in Brazil because Elon Musk just, I don't know exactly what's going on, but it has something to do with misinformation and Brazil not wanting, I don't know. But you will be able to find my coverage, stories, tweets, insights, videos, live updates from practice on Thursday and the whole game day on Friday, the whole environment on the Athletics live blog, which we'll have going starting at 6 a.m. Central Time on Thursday. So everything can be found there.
Okay.
And then I'll have the sights and sounds, crowd stuff, the scene on my Instagram story at Matt Schneidman, no spaces. So I'll be fine. I think I'll make it through. I was in negotiations with my younger brother, David, to give him my Twitter login information.
Okay.
And me to text him anything I wanted tweeting. And he agreed to do it for free.
Wow, that's nice.
But that was quickly nixed by my boss at The Athletic. She said, I don't want to risk anything happening because the AP reported that it's an $8,900 fine if you use a VPN to access Twitter in Brazil. Now, I don't think you can get in trouble if that is the case. I've seen different reports elsewhere that you can't get in trouble. You just can't post misinformation, I don't think you can get in trouble for sending something back to someone in the United States and it being tweeted from a IP address in the United States, even if it's of something from Brazil. But my boss was like, I just would rather be safe than sorry, which I kind of understand.
I get it. Here's what I would caution you about is you're used to First Amendment. You're used to, Bill of Rights stuff that we have here in the United States. You're not going to be in the United States. The rules are completely different once you leave the country. And you are at the whims of another jurisdiction. Just saying. You can't really claim anything. You can't claim that's my First Amendment. They don't have a First Amendment in Brazil or anywhere else, except for here. Just a word of caution.
I'm going to play it safe. I'm really excited to get down there and see the whole environment, experience a new country. Never been there. It's going to be nice with the sleep schedule because it's only 2 hours ahead. It's not going to mess up my clock. I am a little worried about the overnight flight tomorrow because I have serious trouble sleeping on planes. considering taking a melatonin. Haven't decided officially on that yet. But I'm excited for the whole experience. And yes, it would be nice to have Twitter. And who knows, maybe there is some rule that gets told to us in the press box by some official that says you're exempt from the rule. You're allowed to tweet.
Wouldn't count on it.
No, I'm not counting on it either. But the genesis of my anxiety when I don't have Twitter is I'm going to miss out on Packers news and what's happening in Packers land. I will be at the game, so I don't think that will be a problem.
So how many other reporters then are you going to be on the same flight with? Because I don't know how many flights go from Chicago to South. Well, I mean, they're two huge cities, so maybe there's more than I realize, but it's just a long flight.
I don't know who else is on my flight, but I do know Ryan Wood and Tom Silverstein from the Press Gazette and Journal Sentinel will be going. And then Dave Schrader from BAY Channel 2 will be there. So it's just 4 local reporters who are going.
Okay. Wayne and Larry will be there too, but they're on the team charter.
What'd you say?
Wayne and Larry, they'll be there too, but they're on the team charter.
Yeah, I'm saying and Wes and Mike Spofford will obviously be there. I'm just talking, beat reporters that don't work for the team. So I'm really excited for it. Eagles 27, Packers 24 is my prediction.
Okay.
I think their run defense was better last year, at least in terms of EPA per rush, the true media stat I always throw out there. It was horrific the couple years before that. Saquon Barkley behind a better offensive line would worry me if I'm the Packers. They held him in check last year against the Giants. This is a different animal. Jalen Hurts ran roughshod against these guys 2 years ago. I understand it's completely different defense, completely different scheme, completely different personnel. But I think the Eagles just have a little too much offensive firepower. And I still need to see Eric Stokes put together a stretch of healthy and productive regular season games for me to think, okay, he's a solid number 2 corner. And the Eagles just have too many weapons on offense, I think. Packers do too, but I think the Eagles edge them out. I could be wrong. It's probably a good sign for the Packers and their fans that I pick the Eagles. I'll just say that.
It's all right. Do you have everybody's got like a different flight plan now. Are you familiar, not with the traditional term called raw dogging, but what they do on planes now?
Yes, I will not be doing that.
Okay.
I did it on a flight to Ireland a couple months ago because there was no Wi-Fi and no in-flight entertainment.
So you just stared ahead?
Pretty much.
Silently?
It was horrific. It was awful.
I couldn't do that.
I'm on a United flight. I need some Wi-Fi. I need a live TV. I need some movies. I need some music. I'm ready to go.
I sleep well on planes, though. So
I don't. If I 31A, I have an aisle seat. I chose that because it's an overnight flight. Don't want to have to climb over people in the middle of the night. Anyway, I'll probably tune into the show or be on the show the next couple days from Brazil. Doug will hold it down. We appreciate everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed the Matt LaFleur interview. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
My head is going down.